welcome listeners to a new era of Tech It to the Limit. I'm Elliott Wilson, and I am so excited to welcome you to this new format in which I share time with friends from across the digital health industry as they join me to explore topics of import to them and to all of us. As it goes, they come on the pod with whatever topic they want, as long as they bring it back to digital transformation in healthcare. And I could not be happier, humbled, and hyped about our first guest to kick off this new format. My joy friend, my sister from another mister, and the end result of what Claude gave me when I asked to spit out a replica of me, just smarter, funnier, and generally better in most ways. Female. I cannot be more glad to bring on my former Tech It to the Limit co-host, Sarah Harper. Welcome. Can I call you Sarah?
Absolutely. Just as long as you call me. Thanks, Elliot. It's cool to be back, and I'm honored to be like part of the show and from like a slightly different seat. So thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. Now, you wanted to talk about going analog today, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
fun. But
Mm-hmm.
before we get into that, which by the way is a very gutsy move to talk about analog as like the first kind of episode of this new Tech It to the Limit.
I
But
like living dangerously.
before we jump into that though, can you share the really amazing reason why you're not
Yeah.
the co-host of the pod anymore?
Let's see if the background. I see.
Look at that.
Look at
And she takes
that.
center ring. Oh my gosh. Look at
Isn't it
that.
beautiful? I'm
Wow.
trying to get it
Ow, gosh.
closer.
It's
Look,
bright.
there's like
It's
a
bright.
janky
Sorry, I
Band-Aid.
can't look at it.
Yeah, right?
Congratulations, Sarah. That's
Thanks.
wonderful. So since
Yeah.
this is obviously an audio medium, Sarah's getting married. So
Yes.
congratulations.
Yes. Thank you. I'm pretty stoked. Gonna get hitched for a third time. It sounds like a country song. But I'm really confident, as is my partner, that we've figured it out. We figured out the getting hitched as adults thing, and it's going great. It's so yeah, look, it's something to look forward to. Definitely something that is going to take a lot of energy and like investment from me from a cognitive and emotional standpoint, and I'm looking forward to that. So I'm also taking a step back from being a co-host in this chapter in my life, and it brings up a lot of feelings, If I'm being completely honest, Elliot, let's pretend you're my therapist. I haven't really processed them. I'm pretty much avoiding those feelings. And, that I acknowledge that's not a healthy thing, but it is, it's right now how I'm managing it.
And I'm not going to lie to you. It is a little scary to do this on my own.
Well, no doubt you're going to kick ass.
Thanks.
So I'm looking forward to cheering you on from the digital sidelines here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let us talk about going analog. So this was when I saw your topic that you wanted to talk about, I was really kind of so stoked about it because I have on my whiteboard over here, one of my goals for 2026 is to find analog time. So tell me what you meant by going analog.
I'm sort of like it's more of a personal like decision strategically to really do an audit of my life in many ways, which kind of prompted much to our chagrin, like my decision to step away from a few things. But I also like stepping back and reflecting, I noticed like how much technology is embedded in our lives, and sort of part of it's intentional, part of it's like, okay, I've done this reflection and I realize I don't necessarily need all of this, or maybe it's not adding. We've reached like a
Value.
critical mass of value, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the other part that like I didn't even realize, but it like was creeping up and annoying me, sort of like how when you walk into a room and the lights are too bright, or there's like a big crowd in there and you're like, and it's sort of just this like subconscious, like sort of latent like bother that like there's always screens, there's always connectivity, there's always information and noise and disruption. And I didn't realize it was pissing me off, quite frankly, until I really kind of stepped back and thought about how much do I really need this,
Not to say that you shouldn't watch this clip as it rolls through your
Right.
feed. Like
Exactly. Scroll,
nothing
baby,
about that.
scroll.
Yes.
Um,
That should be the new
yeah.
slogan. Scroll, baby,
You're
scroll.
right. Drill, baby, drill. No, that's a little bit PTSD for those of us that grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s. Remember drill, baby, drill? Let's
Oh,
not
I
go there.
remember it. No, yes.
You're like, I blocked it out. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going all crazy. Like, I feel like there's a happy medium.
Mhm.
There's been also quite a bit of interesting content, like in the news media around this topic recently. And I've noticed, like, from a pop culture and like a fashion standpoint,
Mhm.
like analog is back, and
Yes.
from a style point, like my partner has great taste. And I
He
usually
does.
go to him for like, which glasses should I wear with this outfit? Obviously, I didn't ask him today because they're
No,
just showing up like
no.
fantastic. But he
I think
got
you look
me
very
like a really,
stylish.
what's that?
I think you look very stylish. That's a
Oh,
very fetching
thanks.
shirt you're wearing.
Yes, the hoodie is baller, it says "Take it to the limit" on it, so naturally that's not the part of my outfit I'm talking about. Um, but it's mostly what you can see. No, he got me like a Casio digital watch with like the really janky light that like barely lights up the screen at night. I like wearing it actually, I like not being bumped by my watch and like constantly wondering if
Mhm.
I've gotten all my steps in.
Mhm.
But it's also kinda cool looking.
Yeah. So
Uh,
I love that you talked about like the pop culture like trends that are going on. So
mhm, mhm.
Tom and I recently went to a Wanda Sykes event to see
Okay.
her perform. And one of the growing trends is are these yonder bags where you have to put your phone and lock your phone in a bag in order to
Hmm.
get into the show. And you
Whoa.
cannot like it's like a security tag at a department store where you can't
Yeah.
take it off yourself,
OMG.
and it's not unlocked until you leave, and your phone is
Wow.
in there, and if you wanna use your phone, you have to leave the venue in order to have the phone
Fascinating.
unlocked, and it changed the experience of being in the audience for
Yeah.
that show and in that moment, and you're also seeing, like, other artists like Jack White does that. They're finding that it's reducing, like, recording leaks as well, so they're
Mm,
not finding their IP on the air
mm.
on the internet when they are not expecting it to. You're seeing more and more cocktail bars and phone-free club nights where they're saying no phones allowed, and I
Wow.
love that. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that.
100%. That's cool. Yeah, and I mean, my kids are at the age where a lot of their peers are starting to get smartphones,
Mhm.
and we invested in a tin can for their my daughter's 11th birthday so that she could call her best friend who now lives in Michigan. And my son uses it to call me when he's at his dad's. And it's actually, he's 8. It's adorable. He'll be like, Ma, I say, hey, honey. And I'm like, what's up? And he's like, I'm calling you from my tea can. He calls it the tea can.
The tea can.
Yeah, yeah. But I don't know. It's sort of they're little things that I forgot how to do that I'm relearning as I teach my kids. Like,
Press
how to
buttons.
dial a number, and how to
Yeah.
remember a
Remember 'em.
phone number. And like when you hear that sound on the other end of the
Yeah.
phone, like what does that mean? What do you do?
Yeah.
Right? It's like
Yeah.
this whole new training
Yeah.
experience. It's kind of funny. Or he randomly will put me on hold sometimes and I'll get this
Yeah.
silly music. Like there's a switch on the side of the phone. It's an old AT&T like wall phone. But it uses a Wi-Fi. It doesn't use landline.
Do you remember the old plastic clear ones that you could see the gears through?
Yes! Those actually cost more, like than
'Cause you're paying
the,
for the
crappy
nostalgia.
white ones. Yeah, exactly. We were driving to school the other day, so I take my kids to school, there isn't any busing for them, and it's always interesting, like, what we talk about on the way there, and George, my son, is very interested in, like, military history right now. Don't
Mhm.
ask me why, like, but this is, like he's going way down this rabbit hole, and so he's kind of interested in the technology that they used back in, like, World War II and the
Mm.
Vietnam War, and he
Mhm.
goes, "Mom, did you know that if you have the old radio equipment, it still works? Like you can still talk to somebody else who has
Wait,
that equipment. And I'm like,
physics still works?
yeah, exactly, right? And I was like, actually, honey, I have some of that equipment right here. And I go, boop, on the FM radio on my
Uh,
car, right? But we
That's
never listen to the
awesome.
radio. We always listen to what's on my
Yeah,
phone,
yeah,
like
yeah,
Apple
exactly.
Music, Spotify, right? And he
Yeah.
goes, what? And
Well,
like
that's
he
the
just
other thing about
freaked
it, right?
out.
Kids don't
Yeah.
know what it's like to own media, right? They have
Right.
no idea what it's like
Yes.
to own their own media. They don't know what it's
Mhm.
like to to record a song off the radio and make a mixtape or a
Right.
mix CD, right?
For your,
Um,
prom date.
so tell me, so how does this relate back to digital health?
I think it's really important as we who work in the industry are designing for the end user that we consider where the market is shifting. And yeah, everybody like the boomers get all the rage, in terms of like
Yeah, it's because they have
the
all the
biggest
money.
yeah, yeah. That and like they're, what is it like every I heard
Well,
yesterday
for two
from a
reasons,
colleague
right?
like
They have all
every
the
12
money, and if
seconds
you don't
somebody
pay
turns
attention to them,
65.
they're the loudest. I'm sorry, I talked
Yeah.
over you. Can you say that again?
Yeah, right. It's my whiteness and my masculinity overpowering your feminine intellect
I'm sorry. Please do.
desire to be
Please say that again.
included. Okay. No problem. I'm just teasing. So, I heard from a colleague the other day that like every 15 seconds somebody turns 65 in this country, right? So it's a real market, right, that we need to
Hmm.
design for. But
Yeah, and they're not
also,
falling off the back end.
right, there's not everybody. That's not the only market, right? I want to think about how technology sort of contributes to like how your point solution can contribute to the overall noise in the room, right? And
Hmm.
how are you going to mitigate that from a design perspective and an experience one? And I do
Hmm.
think that the way forward is through partnerships and having more groups work together towards building a system that works for the overall the end user, right? Whether it's a patient or a consumer or whatever we're going to call them, right? Ideally technology in the home or technology in an environment that's non even clinical is contributing to your health and your well-being and your
Not detracting from it.
positive and not detracting from it, right? And the way we've designed these things is right now they're really, really bad for us, right?
Well,
And
right.
we can't put them
And
down.
there is lots of evidence to that, right?
Mhm.
I was doing some research on this, right? There's some work in the Clinical Psychiatry of Science journal where showing that it increases depressive symptoms, suicide-related outcomes, and rates among U.S. adolescents. The Pew Research Center has a study where showing that 95% of teens have smartphone access and being 45% report being online almost constantly. And the things that are on the phones are designed to keep you
Keep you.
on the phone and keep
Mhm.
you focused on the phone. And
Mhm.
I think those are parts of what's the things that are very troubling. So
Mhm.
to yes end your thoughts around design, I think we also have to be conscious of the ecosystem of what else is going on in the digital ecosphere of patients to
Right.
allow them to have the space to be analog as a wellness strategy or a health
Right.
strategy, because there's also research around unplugging having physiological benefit.
Right. And that's spot on. And how can we leverage technology to kind of promote like that unplugging? It's a little bit ironic, right? But how can we intentionally design systems that get people outdoors and promote social connection beyond a screen and physical activity? And I think when we think about clinical environments, which there's a lot of noise in clinical
Hmm.
environments, and there's quite a bit of evidence about that not being good for our care force, how can we take away from the monitors and the things that the screens in the room and the technology that gets in the way that makes the environment feel sterile. And the same thing in the home. Like how we walk into a home and a lot of times there's a TV on, there's several people looking at tablet screens or phones, and we spend most of our time working on computers these days, whether we're a
Right.
student or part of the workforce. So how can we rethink that where technology kind of it becomes invisible in a way,
Yeah.
right? And that's a
Yeah.
whole nother conversation, right,
Yep.
around ethics and monitoring and privacy. But like, how can we leverage voice and sensor technology to promote what health and well-being in clinical and residential environments and get screens out of there?
Out of there. Glowing
Like,
rectangles, man. Hashtag
yeah,
machines make care more human, right?
yeah, right.
Um, Sarah, great topic. Thank you so much. Going analog is very important. I have an app on my phone that actually locks down social media after a certain
Mm,
period of time, and I
hell yeah.
cannot change those rules. If I use social media for more than an hour and a half a day, I cannot access it on my phone anymore. And it can only be done by entering a PIN, and only my husband knows that PIN,
I
and
love
he
it.
has forgotten it.
Oh my God.
So, uh, so there you go. Um,
Convenient, Tom. How
so
convenient.
I know, right? He's slick like that. All right. Are you ready for your game?
Heck
All
yeah,
right.
I'm
Because I got
ready.
a quick game for you. It's called Analog for the Ride. You ready?
Nice, okay.
All right. What percentage of US teens say they're online almost constantly? 15%, 30%, 45%, 70%?
45.
45%. According to the Pew Research Center, 45% of teens report being online almost constantly.
I pay attention.
What platform made the away message a full personality trait? A, MySpace, B, Facebook, C, AOL Instant Messenger, or AIM, or D, ICQ?
AIM all the way, baby.
Yeah, turning passive-aggressive song lyrics into communication strategy. All right. Teens using screens 7 or more hours per day are how much more likely to have depression or anxiety versus less or approximately 1 hour? A, the same, B, 1.5 times more, C, 2 times or more, D, 5 times more.
5.
Incorrect. The answer was
Damn it.
C, 2 or more. According to research by Twenge, heavy screen users are more than twice as likely to report depression or anxiety.
Okay.
On Total Request Live, what determined the #1 music video? Was it record label decisions, critics' reviews, viewer call-in votes, or album sales?
You were calling votes.
C, yes. Democracy peaked when you had to call a phone line to support your favorite boy band.
VH1, right?
That was MTV. Oh my
Oh my God.
God. Take away your
Relax.
millennial card. All right.
Oh,
Since
come
smartphones
on.
became widespread around 2010, what has declined most among teens? Watching TV, playing sports, in person socializing, or listening to music?
Ooh. Obviously B or C. I'm gonna go with playing sports.
Incorrect. The correct
Damn
answer
it.
is in-person socializing. According to a
Oh.
longitudinal study by Twenge and colleagues, face-to-face interaction among teens has dropped significantly in the smartphone era. Burning someone a CD in the early 2000s was basically A, a casual gesture, B, a group project, C, a romantic or deeply personal signal, D, a backup strategy.
Backup for what?
I
The
don't know.
apocalypse?
I don't know.
My iPod battery goes out? C, obviously C. Thanks for that,
Yes, playlists
throwing
were
that one up
once the
there.
original love language before algorithms got involved. All right. Telepressure means what? A, fear of phone calls. B, the pressure to respond immediately to messages. C, anxiety from meetings. D, social media addiction.
Oh, totally B.
Correct. According to Barber and Sanfuzzi in the Journal of Occupational Health and Psychology, or Health Psychology, telepressure is the urge to respond immediately, and it's linked to burnout. Adoy. What actually improves creative problem solving? A, multitasking, B, constant stimulation, C, mind wandering during low demand tasks, or D, background TV?
Wait, what, mind wandering? You know?
Yes,
Yeah,
according to research
doodling.
by Baird et al. In Psychological
Yep.
Science, mind wandering
Mhm.
during simple tasks improves creative problem solving.
Mhm.
The phrase "you got mail" is from which era-defining platform?
AOL.
Gmail? AOL, correct. All right, last question. Higher screen time in adolescence is strongly associated with A, better sleep quality, B, no change, C, reduced sleep duration, or D, reduced REM sleep?
Can it be more than one?
No.
C and D? Your face. Okay. Well, I mean, one's kind of linked to the other, so I'll go with C.
C is correct. According to studies summarized by Twenge and others, higher
Twinge.
screen time is consistently linked to shorter sleep duration in adolescence. So, with a score of 9 out of 10, I believe, you
Mm.
are an analog icon.
Hell
Congratulations.
yeah.
Thanks
Do
for
I get, like,
playing
some
on
cool
Tech It to the
swag?
Limit.
I want a hat that says icon.
Sarah, thank you so much for being our first guest on Tech It to the Limit. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and, won't see you next time.
Well, you're
I
always welcome
almost
back.
said it.
You are always welcome back here
Yeah, okay.
anytime. And
I'm like,
and
"Oh."
listeners, stick around for our interview with Dr. Anil Jain from Innovacer. We'll be right back. Do you remember that Lindsay Lohan remake back in the 90s when she played the pair of twins trying to get her parents back together?
Parent Trap.
Yeah, I think about that movie a lot, about how she outsmarts all the adults on both sides, like controlling the narrative. Yeah, it's like now, like you're older and your back hurts and you've lived through your sixth unprecedented time. And meanwhile, your kid is telling you that your partner told her that she could go to her friend's house after school, only to find out after dropping her off that she'd been told no for having destroyed her brother's latest homework project just 2 hours prior. And suddenly, you realize that Dennis Quaid was being gaslit by a couple of preteens. And suddenly, it's not so charming anymore, is it? Introducing Parent Trap, the AI-powered system designed to restore truth, trust, and basic sanity to modern parenting. Using ambient listening, advanced large language model, and real-time narrative comparison, Parent Trap detects when your child is running parallel storylines across caregivers, triggering instant contradiction alerts when narratives don't align. Users can activate gaslight protection mode and never again find themselves apologizing for something they didn't say, or enforcing a rule they didn't make. At its core is our proprietary logic and integrity anomaly response system. Liar delivers AI-powered truth reconciliation for modern families and eliminates narrative discrepancies at the source. Because if you can keep their story straight, they can't trick you into going on to hike with your gold-digging fiancé and leave her in the middle of a lake. And for listeners of Tech It to the Limit, act now and use the code TechIt to unlock premium features like cross-household sync, historical story playback, and advanced analysis on complex teenage multi-layer narratives. Parent Trap, where natural language meets natural consequences. Welcome back to Tech It to the Limit, listeners. It is so great to be here at the Vive event in sunny Los Angeles. What a nice change of pace from where I currently reside in New Jersey, where my family is under about 1.5 feet of snow right now. So I'm really grateful to be here with you and with our listeners at Tech It to the Limit. So today on the podcast, we're joined by Dr. Anil Jain, a physician executive who has spent his career at the intersection of clinical care, digital innovation, large-scale health system transformation. Dr. Jain brings a rare combination of frontline clinical insight and enterprise strategy, helping organizations rethink how technology, data, and operational design can actually improve outcomes rather than just add complexity. From leading digital health initiatives to driving system-wide innovation efforts, Dr. Jain has consistently focused on how we make healthcare more connected, more intelligent, and ultimately more human. Today, we're going to explore what it really takes to modernize care delivery in the US and inside of complex organizations, and how leaders can balance bold innovation with clinical reality. Dr. Jain, thank you so much and welcome to Tech It to the Limit. Can I call you Anil?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Thank
wonderful.
you, Elliott.
Appreciate it. Well, we always like to have our guests on Tech It to the Limit start with a dad joke to get the juices flowing. Do you have one for us today?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of a dad joke it is. My kids are a lot older than they used to be. And so one of the things that often happens when you do the kind of work I do is people get a little confused as to what I do. Trained as a doctor, and now I'm not. So one of the jokes that I would often make is I sort of say that I've turned in my stethoscope
Yeah.
now, and now I'm listening to what the words are murmuring.
I like that. Thank you. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
And then, of course, I tell them what it is that I do.
Yeah, right. And well, what a great place to start. What is it that you do?
Yeah, so I think when you've been practicing medicine in this incredible era, what tends to happen, and happened for me, is that your gears start to sort of turn in terms of thinking about how things could be done differently.
Mm-hmm.
So in my career, I've been thinking about what is the role of technology to improve the way we do things, whether it's processes, you think about electronic medical records, and now most recently, you think about the information overload we have. You think about all the amount of data that's out there that we need to stay on top of, and really trying to make it so that this next generation of clinicians are focusing on what it is that they can do and not necessarily being encumbered by technology that's getting in the way of them managing to take care of their
Crushed
patients.
by the weight of the data we generate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's only going to get worse. It's not like
Mhm.
we're going to cut back on the amount of data. Connected devices, the knowledge bases are increasing, and frankly, clinical care is becoming more complicated.
Well, you have a lot of experience in working with cutting through the massive amounts of data to find true intelligence or true information out of it from your time with IBM Watson. Can you tell us a bit about that and some of the lessons that you learned from your time there?
Yeah, I look back at my 5.5 years, and I won't tell you the number of days and hours on top of that, as very educational. As you probably know, I became an IBMer involuntarily through an acquisition of my company that I
Okay.
co-founded.
Yeah.
So I woke up one morning being an IBMer, and the IBM that I woke up to was not the same IBM from 30 years or
Hmm.
40 years ago.
Hmm.
They were at an inflection point. And there was this belief that we were moving away from the winter of AI
Mm.
into sort of the thawing and the spring of AI. And as often happens when you have pioneers who are trying to create a new market, sometimes the marketing gets ahead of the product, and sometimes
No,
it
no.
never happens. I know, Elliot. I know you're shocked, but it never happens. And but I think IBM Watson in particular did something very courageous. It
Mhm.
tried to push the envelope, and in the process, things didn't work out the way that the IBM leadership wanted it to work out. Now, I left long before Watson Health was shut down, if you will, and disbanded. But I think a couple of lessons learned that I'm willing to share is that sometimes you have to think about what it is that AI is doing. AI for the sake of AI is not the right message. It should be about how we're making people more effective. So instead of AI curing cancer, it should be the physicians and the research scientists. How are they curing cancer with the use of Watson AI?
Mhm.
And obviously, the messaging wasn't always synergistic with that. It was, what is the technology doing as opposed to what are people doing?
Do you think that like that was some of the original pushback around the use of AI in healthcare was because the initial excitement before the winter of discontent was pushed so hard as like AI can do it, and then people kind of there was this pushback to say, I don't want AI to do it. I want AI to help me do it.
I think that's part of it. I think people would like nothing better than to have AI replace low value work that they would much rather have it be fully automated.
Hmm.
But I think you're right. I think they don't want AI to replace what makes them human, the clinical reasoning, the interconnectedness that doctors have with patients, and that the industry in general looks at as being an essential part of being a physician or being a physician leader.
Yeah.
But I think there's more to it. I think there are data issues
Mm.
that need to be thought about when you are trying to build something as powerful as what IBM was trying to do at
Can
that.
you expand on that? When you say when you talk about data issues, I have my in mind some thoughts about what I
Yeah,
think data issues are, but I'd love to hear your perspective. Like, give us an example of
sure,
that.
sure. So one of the raw materials of AI, not only in order for it to be trained on a certain model or for it to continuously adapt to the changes that are happening, it requires data as a raw material.
Hmm.
And I think whether we were in the early days at Watson or whether we were at the right time, data ownership, the creation of data, the quality of the data, the provenance of that data, these are all questions that need to be addressed as prerequisites for scaling AI.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think that's one of the things that excites me about Innovacer, frankly, and what we're doing now. But at Watson, I think those were early days. If you think about some of those issues that are coming up, and still today, some of these have not been fully solved.
Sure. I know. I think it comes down to a lot of human factors too, right? Especially in healthcare provider organizations where it comes down to the creation of those raw materials comes down to human factors and process in are you documenting cleanly in a consistent or standardized fashion for a health system, right? So if you've got a large scale health system that has variation in practice across multiple care sites, right, all trying to enter in data about a patient, um, in like I said, in various in variation, your data, your raw materials, you might have some iron ore over here, you might have some, some sulfur over here, and they don't necessarily mix well when you're trying to make the package.
I think that's part of it. In fact, I started my early days as a health IT person, really focusing on interoperability. And
Hmm.
one of the things that we would try to stress is the importance of standards.
Hmm.
So making sure that that iron ore is tagged as iron ore and not something else, so that there's no pollutants that sort of creep in the process.
That's right.
But I think with AI, we probably, especially with generative AI, we probably don't need to spend as much time figuring out what's iron ore and what might be sodium and what might be sulfur. I think we have the opportunity to say, you know what, we're just going to throw all of this at the agent and let the agent figure out what's iron ore and what's sulfur and what's the other impurities that might be in there. And we spend less time having to deal with some of that curation of that data.
So, but well, let me ask you. I mean, I want to push. I want to dig into that for a little bit because yesterday I was in this fabulous session on patient-centered AI design, right? And it was a great conversation. Some fabulous stuff around a conversation around synthetic data and around informed consent for patients in providing their data or interacting with an agent. And one of the things that one of the speakers brought up was a recent study that, specifically with generative AI, was pretty good at identifying information sources that were peer-reviewed, vetted, and legitimate sources. And however, when a fake study around supplements comes up, right? They've learned to put that into a format that looks like it's peer reviewed, and then all of a sudden, the generative models they don't they start to weight that with as just as much weight as true medical journal theses. So, how do we combat that?
Yeah. So one of the things I tell our R&D teams is that anyone can use generative AI, and we know that 'cause in our personal lives we're all using it. We use it for almost everything. But the issue isn't about just using the generative AI. You have to really create an art and a science around the prompts that you use. In addition to that, the results or the output of these generative AI algorithms need to be hit up against some knowledge base. So, for example,
So creating some kind of small language model.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Or even if you're using a large language model, taking that output, let's say it comes back with 4 articles, and we're not entirely sure if all 4 of those articles have the same weight when it comes to peer-reviewed prominence. You can go back to a knowledge source and say, okay, of these outputs of these journal articles, which one of them has the highest index when it comes to being cited by very authoritative people? And then you keep doing that until you get to the answer that you want. So I think the trick isn't to use generative AI models for these things, but to use it as one piece of a successive process in order to arrive at the type of response that you need. Sometimes you need a quick and dirty response, and then maybe that's okay. But if you're trying to tell clinicians what guidelines they should be thinking about when they're taking care of patients, you want to make sure you're going through a series of steps that gives you the
A
same way we
defined
all
set
do.
of guidelines.
That's right. That's right. And so maybe you only hit up against the American Diabetes Association guidelines for that, and not go to the lay press or go to the journals by themselves, because that's already been vetted by experts. But I think the real special sauce of generative AI is going to be to aggregate all this information. And if we do it right in a series of steps, we might discover relationships that we would not have normally discovered because we keep going back to the same data sources.
Right.
So
Sure.
there is some-
It's making linkages that we wouldn't, as humans, have the time, power, or energy to actually.
That's right. So we don't want to overly constrain what these systems do.
Yeah, sure. But at the same time, we also don't want them to run loose and wild.
Absolutely, that's right. And and as you know, especially in healthcare, we're generally very conservative when it comes to changing the way we practice. So as long as we're able to create that transparency and explainability and a level of trust, and it goes all the way from, as you mentioned earlier, from the data, but also how are we thinking about how that output is going to be integrated into the workflow. Otherwise, I think we're going to have failed experiments or failed pilots over and over.
And I'll add on to that. I'm going to yes and you on that, right? It's not just the integration into the workflow. I think when you're trying to use generative AI platform or even an automated agent to interact with a patient, you have to design empathy into that as well, right? So it's not just about being accurate. It's also about context of the people that you're interacting with.
Absolutely. And we know that studies have shown that if you design the generative AI models to communicate with patients, they can be done so with empathy. Will the AI models be more empathetic than the clinicians who have the most empathy, like the Marcus Welby of
Sure.
Probably not.
No.
But could an AI agent have more empathy than the average busy clinician? Of course.
But not just that. consistent empathy, right? So because, and this was another point that they made yesterday in this conversation, which I thought was really, very poignant, that doesn't matter how many times an agent is going to speak the same thing or interact with a patient, they're never going to bring their road rage to the conversation or their work conflict
Their
to the
sense of
conversation.
urgency, or
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. It's always going to be that patient, consistent kind of interaction.
I hope that's the case. I think what
Mm.
we have seen in generative AI models, without the right safeguards in place, without the right types of engineers like we have at Innovator, is that expected consistency sometimes falls short in generative AI.
Hmm.
And that if you run the same prompt multiple times, you might get different answers. So we have to be careful.
Mhm.
But I think you're 100% right. Sometimes patients expect empathy. Sometimes they expect no nonsense. What do I need to do? Or I just need this appointment made. AI agent, can you help me make this appointment? So we have to pick and choose how we fold in empathy. Empathy is a human trait
Mhm.
that has a time and place and is an incredibly powerful trait. But sometimes what we also need to do is just get stuff done.
Yeah.
And healthcare is full of broken
Mhm.
processes, and patients are expecting. What we don't want to do is trade explainability for empathy.
Mhm.
I think
Oh,
patients
yeah. I
deserve.
love that mic drop moment. I love that. Don't trade away explainability for empathy. That's great. Can we switch gears for a minute?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we started to delve into agent, which I think is going to be the word of the conference this
Absolutely.
year.
I would agree. Yeah.
This year. So I want to talk about automation
Yeah.
and what autonomous healthcare looks like. What's your vision for autonomous healthcare? So you're the CIO at Innovacer. You've got this wonderful, rich history that you're bringing with you. So I would love to get a sense of what is your vision for an autonomous healthcare future.
So I mean, it's an incredibly exciting time. So as the chief innovation officer, I get to play with every team. I get to play with our go-to-market team, so I hear what our clients need.
Mhm.
I get to play with our customer success team to make sure that what we have deployed is actually working the way it was intended. I work as a co-chair of our AI steering committees to make sure we're doing this in a responsible way. But most importantly, I work with our R&D team. And what we try to do is try to understand a little bit about what is the broken processes and issues that are the healthcare systems are dealing with, but also the various members of the ecosystem, health plans, providers, every part of that ecosystem, there's opportunity. And so in autonomous healthcare, it's how do we bring back the sense of control, the sense of I'm going to be able to do what it is that I do within this ecosystem in a way that reduces all the friction that gets in my way to deliver the best outcomes. If I was speaking specifically of clinicians, I would say, how do we allow every member of a care team to operate at the top of their license by removing all the friction that prevents them from doing so? Maybe it's maybe it's paperwork. Maybe it's having to call the patient 8 times to get a follow up. And so autonomous healthcare is really about bringing that autonomy back in. It's also about automating with AI the parts and pieces that we can safely do so that we are freeing up the time of those individuals to go do things that only they can do.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I want to get into a little bit about provider hesitancy in a bit, but we want to offload non-value add tasks that our clinicians or, and frankly, our patients have to do,
Anyone in
right?
the ecosystem.
And I think about some of the pushback that providers or hesitancy that providers might have when you walk into, because everybody says we're gonna unburden you from non-value add things. And if I'm a clinician, say everything I do is valuable. Like, so it's around messaging properly what they're actually going to be capable of doing. More time with the patient, more hands-on care, operating at the top of your license as opposed to, running down a list and making a phone calls all day.
Most clinicians I talk to, and trust me, it's one of the topics that happens in every cocktail party, right?
Mhm.
Is that I don't think they do believe that everything that they do is important. I think they believe
I think
that
that's fair.
a minor part of their day is things that are important, and then the vast majority of their day is taken up by low value
Documentation.
work. Not just documentation, but getting on the phone and trying to explain to an insurance company that my patient really needs an MRI of the brain.
Mhm.
I think most of them, in fact, part of this is what's leading to some of the burnout that we're experiencing in healthcare providers. I don't, doesn't matter what survey you look at, it's say between 40 to 60% of clinicians self-identify as being burned out. And so I think I would love to be in a world where every single thing that a clinician does is only things that they could do and is incredibly valuable. And there may have been a time in history where that was the case, but we now have an opportunity to find those forward-thinking clinicians, have them be champions for the transformation that we all need. And the old saying that I always tell our team is, you put 5 docs in a room, you get 10 opinions. So you're not going to bring everyone, and there's always going to be laggards. But we know from all the other innovation that's happened in healthcare, whether it's the EMR, whether it's a new drug, a new device, that it just takes a few trusted people to move forward, and everyone else follows. They don't do so blindly. They look for peer-reviewed literature. They look for experience. It's just, we're used to this. We're used to, in healthcare, having innovation trickle in until those people that you really respect just adopt it, and then it takes off.
Yeah, when you reach that tipping point in your experience, and I think you're right. Folks, clinicians certainly could come up with a laundry list of the non-value add tasks. So my question then to you is, outside of those forward-thinking clinicians that lead the vanguard, um, what are the drivers of clinician hesitancy when implementing, autonomous healthcare?
So I think first is just making sure they understand what we mean by autonomous healthcare. We're not talking about taking away the right to have a relationship with the patient from them. We're not talking about making clinical decisions in place of them. We have to remind them that they're still in charge of the clinical reasoning. They're still in charge of clinical prescribing, at least for the moment. That may change with the experiments happening in other places. Um, but they have to understand that, just like when the Bluetooth stethoscope came into practice. By the way, I was one of those people that resisted getting a Bluetooth enabled stethoscope. I still have my old stethoscope. I'm like, why do I need a Bluetooth connected stethoscope to tell me what kind of murmur this is? But I'll tell you, once I used it, I didn't go back,
Hmm.
because all of a sudden I said, even if I know what that murmur is when I listen to someone's heart, and I'm an internal medicine doc when I used to practice, um, the idea that it's now connected to my smartphone and my smartphone can help me diagnose this type of murmur is changes everything. So those folks that are sort of resistant to technology or resistant to change, they need to understand that their way of life is going to be enhanced in certain ways as long as they're able to be somewhat flexible. We had the same issue with electronic health records and even with other innovations that have happened in healthcare. So putting them in a
Would you consider the implementation of electronic health records to be a success in the healthcare technology space?
the only people that would consider it to be a success were those folks that would come to see their doctor, and their doctor would be clueless about what was happening to them because their chart was halfway across campus. So no, Elliot, I'm not considering
Oh, okay.
the EMR rollout because it made the fundamental mistake of trying to digitize broken processes. It was a glorified paper medical record in a digital form. It wasn't how people should be
It's a
practicing
revenue
medicine.
cycle management system more than anything.
That's right. Making sure no one, the charge capture and all that. So I'm not saying it was a success. What I'm saying though is that it didn't matter. Even before we knew it was a success or a failure, there was a class of end users, a class of clinicians who said, no, I don't want to change.
Mhm. Mhm.
Instead, had they been part of the dialogue, had they been involved if how the EMRs would be rolled out and what they would be used for, we may have had a very different story about
Sure.
the success or failures of EHRs.
Yeah. No, and because I think you need naysayers in design,
Absolutely.
um,
Absolutely.
because if you can delight a naysayer, I mean,
You've got something.
exactly.
Absolutely.
So, can we make this? We have just a couple more minutes.
Sure.
Can we bring this home for our listeners? Can we
Yeah.
make this real? Can you give an example of something that Innovator is doing?
Sure.
I think you guys are coming out with an announcement this week, right?
We are. I'll give you two things that we're doing that I think would be exciting for your listeners. The first is, again, I mentioned earlier, I was an internal medicine doc. And I would take care of a lot of heart failure patients, and I would often refer them to clinics where the clinic staff would make sure the patients were taking the right medications, and there was this intensive back and forth and a lot of travel back and forth to the clinic. to make sure that the patients were on the right doses of their medications. What we did at Innovacer was we bought a company called Story Health. And what Story Health did was in a virtual way with using a smartphone with the patient and a EHR embedded workflow for the care team, a way for the management of the heart failure patients to optimize those guideline directed therapies in a way that was a benefit to the patient, was a benefit to the cardiologist, benefit to the internal medicine doc, because now the cardiologist can focus on the patients who are the sickest of the sick, and those patients who can uh, sort of be managed through health coaches and through uh, care managers be done so in an offline way.
Sure.
And it's been tremendously successful. And we're announcing that Alani Healthcare is going to be partnering with us for their heart failure clinic to have Story Health power the way that so that they can reach a lot more patients when it comes to the work that they're doing.
Yeah, and so does it also automate the risk stratification of those patients, or is
It,
that kind of like fed into it, and then it's more of the implementation of the care plans?
So the good thing about heart failure is it's really well understood, and we have a bunch of different guidelines. So what we do is we look at which patients are deviating from those guidelines
Mm-hmm.
and which patients aren't on the highest doses of the medications that they should be on, but are still getting into challenges by having to come back to the emergency room
Mm-hmm.
or to be hospitalized. And so we risk stratify based on what we expect those patients to be looking like and what they're actually looking
Right.
like when it
Okay.
comes to the
So
operational
deviation
side.
from the mean.
That's well,
Well, not
deviation
from the
from the
mean. I should say
standard of
from
care.
yes.
Deviation
Right.
from the
Right.
standard of
Right.
care.
Right.
And we look at that as a way to risk stratify, and then you're 100% right. We target those patients we think would benefit the most from this type of work. But really, it's about enabling and empowering Illini Healthcare to be able to do that. The story is not about Innovacer and
Mm.
Story Health. The story is about those patients with heart failure at Illini Healthcare who are now all of a sudden able to be managed at home for their heart failure instead of having to bounce back and forth between clinics and emergency rooms and hospitals.
What does that look like from the? I mean, almost out of time here, but what does that look like from the patient's perspective? How do
So
they
patient,
interact?
yeah, the patient will, using their smartphone, will get a text message, will secure text message that will let them know that something new is in their inbox, if you will, to from their provider or from their health coach to to sort of change their like, for example, a dosage adjustment.
Mhm.
They'll click on a link and then they'll bring them into a portal. Again, will positively identify who they are,
Mhm.
and the portal will go ahead and let them know what the instructions are. We'll even ask them if they're taking their medications. We'll give them questionnaires to see how they're feeling to make sure there are no side effects. So it's a very interactive process that's done through technology that they themselves are using on a regular
Right.
basis.
Right. Sure.
And then at home, there'll be some remote patient monitoring equipment that will communicate with their smartphone.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, I'm very excited to see the outcomes of that. I think that'll be really great. My grandmother suffered from heart failure for quite some time, and eventually it took her. But I wonder about someone as fragile as she was. I mean, she was probably one of the folks that probably needed the higher touch levels of care. So I think that's one. So you mentioned two examples.
Yeah. So I think the next example that we're really excited about is really thinking through one of the, I keep using the concept of broken processes. One of the most broken processes, and all of us, or at least ourselves or our family members, have experienced the idea of having to get prior authorization for a medical service. So we're looking at this in both sides.
Hmm.
How does the provider help? How do we help the provider have a better experience with prior authorization for their patients? And then how does the health plan have a better experience for their members so that there is
Hmm.
we lift off all boats, if you will,
Hmm.
with the solutions. So we're helping health systems right now, really using a combination of data analytics, automation, and AI, really solve the conundrum of how do you get all the information together that you need for prior authorization? How do you submit it error free if you can? And then how do we very quickly get that answer back so that the patient can go ahead and schedule their MRI of the brain or MRI of the
Hmm.
knee or whatever it might be? And it's a win-win-win for everyone involved.
Yeah.
And
I have a vision of around prior auth or claims where the provider organization has a bot
yes,
that is collecting everything, framing it up, using generative AI to create the letter, getting that letter out. That gets absorbed by a bot on
yeah,
the insurer side that's going to then evaluate it and then provide an automated response back. And then that bot receives it, makes adjustments, sends it back, and it's just going to be bots talking to each other back and forth
That is the
until it's solved.
Yeah, that is the future. And it will happen in a split second. In
Mm-hmm.
some cases, they will be speaking their own language that we will
Yeah.
never understand, right?
Have you ever
Yes.
two generative AI or
Yes.
GPTs next to each other and have them talk?
Yeah. We've done some pretty interesting things and we do believe, you're 100% right, Elliot. We do believe there's a world where AI agents will be talking to other AI agents. And we have been thinking about this for a while. So we're actually heavily investing in an AI orchestration platform. And that's why I mentioned that we're working with the providers and we're working with the health plan, because we do believe there's a world in which the orchestration will be the next interoperability challenge. It won't be about, hey, does ICD-9 and ICD-10 codes of this, and this mean the same thing over here?
Mm-hmm.
The next interoperability challenge will be with AI agents,
Mm-hmm.
talking to other AI agents.
Yeah. What's the language they're going to use to talk to each
That's
other?
right. And we've got a bit of a head start with MCP, and now Innovator has added healthcare MCP, but that's just a start.
Yeah. This has been a fabulous conversation. Thank you so much. One last question for our listeners. So if you were speaking to founders that may be out there here at Vive, what would be your message or advice to them, or your call to action to them in their journey?
Yeah, I having been a founder, I will tell you the three things: solve a problem that actually will exist in a few years, not just problems that exist today. Second, think about the way that the solutions will fit into the healthcare workflows. If it doesn't fit into a workflow in a straightforward way, it's not going to get adopted. And the third is focus on the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. There has to be an ROI. These days, the consumers are incredibly intelligent. They come to conferences like Vive. They learn about what's working, what's not working. So if you don't have a demonstrable ROI, it's going to be very difficult from a resource point of view to pay for it. So founders need to understand, solve the problems that will exist in a few years, make sure that there's a way to pay for those, and figure out how to get them integrated into the workflow. Otherwise, it's a non-starter.
Yeah. So long-term problems, fit into the workflow, and focus on outcomes. You can't get more simple than that. Dr. Jain, thank you so much for spending some time with us here today on Tech to the Limit.
Thank you, Elliot. This was a lot of fun.
Appreciate it. See you next time on Tech to the Limit, everybody. Thanks for listening. Well, welcome back to Tech is the Limit, listeners. After that amazing interview with Dr. Anil Jain from Innovaccer. Now, that was back at Vive. We've gone through some changes here at Tech is the Limit since then, earlier in the season. But one of the things that hasn't changed is we still get hungry. We still crave those wise nugs. So thought I would share a few of some of my takeaways with you all at the end of the episode here that I took away from my conversation with Dr. Jain. The first huge nugget that he dropped on us there was, don't trade away explainability for empathy. Sometimes, he said this, sometimes patients expect empathy, sometimes they expect no nonsense. Empathy is a human trait that has a time and a place, but sometimes what we need to do is just get stuff done. So don't sacrifice using AI for explainability just for the sake of empathy. Second, AI orchestration. So he said they are investing heavily in AI orchestration platform as the next interoperability challenge. It came up in the context of this prior auth joke where we were joking about AI agents kind of talking back and forth to each other, and how we would have this need to have this orchestration between agents to be able to do this. And it really kind of makes me wonder how much more society is going to end up paying in healthcare costs for developing and sustaining AI to take care of prior authorizations designed to maximize shareholder wealth versus how much it would just cost to switch to a single payer system designed to maximize citizen health instead. So I just kind of think about that when I think about all of these technological workarounds we have for the health system that we have today. And the last is, I loved the metaphor he was making around data and mining for ore. Not that mining for data is a new metaphor, but in context at Gen AI, I thought that was interesting. Talking about data as different types of ore that previously had to be cleaned and cataloged before it could be understood, and then with Gen AI coming around, iron ore embedded deep in a gang of silica and calcite simply needs to be loaded into the macerator, and out comes a fully made dashboard replete with animations. More specifically, the value here is that Gen AI can make linkages across data sources that humans might not otherwise be able to do because they haven't thought to, or didn't know, or weren't even able to. So those were some of my tasty, wise nuggets that I took from Anil, and I really thank him for it. And also thank you for teaching me a little bit of some Bollywood dancing at HIMSS this year. Thank you, sir. I really did enjoy that. Well, that's it for our first new episode of Tech It to the Limit. Thank you so much to Sarah Harper and Dr. Anil Jain from Innovaccer. Thank you so much for joining us, listeners. And if you like the show, please tell a friend. If you didn't, tell an enemy. But for God's sake, tell someone. But the greatest support you can give is to just leave a comment and review wherever you listen to your podcast. That's where the algorithm gets all hot and bothered. So we'll see you next time on Tech It to the Limit.